having a St. Louis 7 episode following a podcast that can be heard on OT with Oliver, wherever you get your podcast. Let's plug the website first, man. Let's talk about not just this book regarding the Kansas City Chiefs, which is phenomenal, even if you're not a Chiefs fan, but the other stuff that you got on that site.
Well, I put on there, I think the last 6 books that I've published, some of the older ones, they're not still in circulation. You might be able to find them at a antique store or something like that. But the most recent ones, and most of my books are about sports. There's a few things that are related loosely to sports, but all of the recent books and any that I will be doing moving forward will be available on there. It's davidsmalebooks.com. The top thing you'll see is an advertisement basically for the Chiefs book. Then you'll see upcoming appearances, book signings. I will be in St. Louis at the end of October, so those are on there as well. You have to load them 3 at a time, but it takes a little while to do that. And then after that, you'll see me appearing in media, things like that. And then after that, you'll see some of the other books that I've done, and many of them are on an as-told-to basis. This one, obviously, I wrote on my own, but that's where you'll find them. And the next one to appear on there will probably be one that I did during the pandemic with Joe Lenardi, the inventor of bracketology, and this book is on the history of bracketology.
So as we get ready to start 7 questions, sometimes St. Louis 7 questions, sometimes just 7 questions in general, how long does it take? You've got 50 years of Kansas City Chief history. How long does it take somebody to write that book?
Well, a normal person, I'm not sure what you would say to that, but I definitely am not in that category. So when Reedy Press out of St. Louis contacted me in mid-March, they got me really excited about the project, and then they told me the deadline was mid-June. And when I said that was fast, they said, well, we'll find somebody else. I said, no, I didn't say I wouldn't do it. I just said it's fast. And then they told me that mid-June would have the book out at the end of October. So I actually wrote the whole thing in 2 weeks.
We brought up Vahe Gregorian in the podcast. We told kind of a funny Kevin Harlan story, more maybe funny about broadcasting, but you got a good Vahe story?
Other than the fact that I'm older than he is, and I tease him about, how gray he is, and I'm not. He's too nice to make fun of.
In Kansas City, what's your favorite barbecue place?
Oh, that's like asking me which is my favorite kid. It depends on which one I have a coupon for, or which one is closest when those hunger pains come. I would say my top 5 are Joe's Kansas City Barbecue, Q39, Jack Stack, Hayward's Barbecue, and maybe Gates, just because of the, when you walk in the door, they start shouting at you, "Hey man, help you!" And I just think it's funny to be shouted at when you walk into a restaurant. But I mean, there's a statistic that says if you go to a different restaurant, now not necessarily a different one in the same chain, but not a different chain. Like if there's 3 Gates, you go to 3 of them. Count that. You could go to a different barbecue restaurant every single day in Kansas City and still have some left over after a year. That's pretty impressive.
Why is Kansas City a football town?
That's a good question. Certainly the success that the Chiefs have had has added to that. But I think about, football is a tough sport. And, I think if the St. Louis Cardinals weren't so successful, that St. Louis could possibly be a football town as well, because it's the Midwest thing. You get into it, or you get out of it what you put into it. This is a hardworking town, like St. Louis is, like Des Moines is, like Omaha is, like, pick a city in the Midwest. People work hard, and they appreciate the fact that it takes a lot of hard work to be successful at football, and it takes teamwork. Of all this, you can have one dominant player in basketball, and everybody else be, as Moses Malone say, 4 guys off the street in Newport Beach, Virginia, and still be successful. Football, you could have the best quarterback ever, and if he doesn't have receivers and he doesn't have a line blocking for him, he's not going to be successful. I think it's the hard work and the teamwork and just pulling yourself up by your bootstraps idea of football that resonates so well in Kansas City.
We didn't talk about this in the podcast. Do you have a good MU-KU story?
I did a book in 2006, I think it was, that I did with the Kansas City Star. They approached me about writing a book on the rivalry between the two schools, and they said, and I was going through the interview process, said, why should we choose you? And I said, because I won't be biased at all, because I hate them both. I'm a K-State guy. What I found, though, is going through it, when there were periods that Mizzou was doing really well, I'd start finding myself rooting for Mizzou, and then I'd slap myself and go, wait a minute, that's Mizzou. I can't root for them. And then I'd find myself even more appalling. I'd find myself rooting for KU, and I'd go, wait a minute, I can't root for KU. But, the one you mentioned in the podcast about the game at the border war at Arrowhead, my favorite memory of that is the pregame show. And this was in the time when ESPN ran the series of commercials, such and such lives here. And, so people were holding up signs about their rivals or whatever. And there was a sign right behind the set that said, obesity lives here. And I laughed so hard over the dig on Mark Mangino that that's my favorite memory of that rivalry.
Hey, David, want to know what my favorite memory was?
Go ahead.
Final score.
Yeah. Well, all right. I got to share this with you. This will irritate you as a Mizzou guy, but I've written for the Final Four program for a number of years. And 2012, I was doing a story on the 20-year anniversary of the Duke-Kentucky game, and I had interviewed Christian Laettner, and I had interviewed Sean Woods, the guy from Kentucky that hit the basket with 2.1 seconds to put Kentucky up one. I think I'd talked to Bobby Hurley. Neither coach would talk to me because it was during the season. And so I called the NCAA and I said, I need help. Who else should I include in this? I need one more source. And they said, well, why don't you interview Vern Lundquist? He was at the game and he's a great storyteller. I thought, oh, that'll be perfect. Everybody loves Vern because he's so jovial and talkative and stuff. And it was the most boring interview I'd ever done in my life. Every question was answered yes, no, maybe. I mean, it was dry. And I obviously caught him on a bad day, but I always finish my interviews with, is there anything else that I haven't asked you? So I did that with him. And he said, well, there's one other thing. I haven't ever really shared this with anybody, but in 1972, I was the sports anchor at WFAA in Dallas, and Calvin Hill, the running back for the Cowboys, who was an all-pro running back, calls me up on a Thursday night and said, Janet just delivered our first child, and, we have a son, and I just wanted you to know. And he said, would you mind, it's a slow news night, would you mind if I share this on the news? He said, no, that would be fine. He said, that night I got to announce the arrival of Grant Henry Hill. The following Sunday, Calvin Hill throws a perfect 50-yard touchdown pass, halfback option pass, and the Cowboys beat their rivals, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Fast forward 20 years, I'm sitting courtside, and here's Grant Henry Hill running the baseline. He throws a perfect three-quarter court pass to Christian Laettner, who hits the shot, and Duke beats Kentucky, their rivals. You think you could use that? And I'm like, dude, you just wrote my lead. And he starts laughing and stuff. And so at the time I worked in an office filled with KU folks and one guy who was a Missouri fan. He grew up on the Kansas side as a Yankees fan, a Raiders fan, and a Missouri fan just because he liked jabbing people, liked, twisting the knife. So I kind of thought I'd have some fun with it. I had no idea how good it would be. I gathered the KU fans, said, do you want to have some fun at Dustin's expense? And they said, sure, what do we have to do? I said, nothing, just react. I knock on his door, he holds up his hand, said, I'll be right out. Comes out, and I said, and he knew me as an insurance guy. He didn't know my writing side. And I said, hey, I just want to tell you, I'm doing a story for the Final Four program on the Duke-Kentucky game in 92. And he interrupts me, he goes, oh, yeah, great. Grant Hill throws a pass, Christian Laettner kicks the ball, turns, shoots it. Wait a minute. You're writing a story for the Final Four program? And I said, yeah, I've written for the Final Four program for like 8 straight years. So you've probably read some of my, oh, wait a minute. You've never had any reason to go to the Final Four. I can't say, because this is going over the airways, I can't say what he said to me, but I can tell you he did not invite me to lunch. And I saw him like 5 years later, and he was still angry at me. And it just happened. You know, I wasn't intentionally trying to dig at Missouri, but it was fun poking at that guy because he liked to twist the knife. So there's another KU-MU rivalry thing. I don't like either one of them. So I don't have a dog in the fight. I like kicking whoever's down.
And unfortunately, there have been more times than not where that was possible. All right, so as we wrap it up, St. Louis 7. Again, the name of the book, I want to make sure I've got it. Oh, by the way, here. There it is right there. Pictures are fantastic. And the stories are great. Name of the story, name of the book, The Keys to the Kingdom. People come and visit you in Kansas City. David, where do you take them?
Well, I'm supposed to say to the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art, or, one of the famous fountains. I take them to a Royals game. I take them out to eat barbecue. I take them to the parks, stuff like that. But barbecue comes up several times a day.
All right. Last question. I'm going to steal from one of my favorite writers of all time. What have I not asked you?
I'm honored. Where I'm going to eat when I'm in St. Louis at the end of October.